Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome to another episode of Going In Raw Countout, the show where it's a top 10 show, but in podcast form. And we felt that given, of course, and I know, the news cycle moves quick. People forget quickly. But it was only a couple weeks ago now that CODY RHODES put in one of what everybody's saying is the gutsiest. God, the gutsiest performances.
God damn it, pal. You got some guts.
At Hell in a Cell, wrestling an entire Hell in a Cell match. A fairly brutal one at that, with a pectoral muscle completely torn off bone.
Yeah.
And it was all the talk of the town up until, I don't know, Jeff Hardy got arrested or MJF did something else. I don't know. In any event, everybody was talking about it, so it got us thinking, man, what other super gutsy performances have there been in pro wrestling? Now, our good friendos over at Cultaholic had already done a list where they talked about the top 10 wrestlers that performed through severe injuries. So we're going to do something slightly different. Explain the difference, Larson.
So gutsy performances can include injuries, but not necessarily has to. We have one entry in here that's not injury related at all in terms of the match itself. Now, someone returning from retirement due to injury, and there's other entries that were considered that had nothing to do with injuries. I mean, for example, Seth Rollins had that hour-long gutsy performance in that gauntlet match on Raw a few years back. Hell of a performance.
Very gutsy. Yeah, it's just, it's like, hey, maybe somebody's banged up. Maybe they do. They're suffering from a legitimate injury. But maybe it's a match where it's like, man, this person really did that? That's gutsy. God.
Yeah, damn it, pal. You got some guts.
Yeah, after every single one of these matches, you got to figure Vince is back there at Grill, and that's exactly what he says.
Exactly.
God damn it, pal. You've got some guts.
All right, Steve, let's kick us off. What do we got at number 10?
Oh, man, this is a hell of a gutsy performance. God damn it. Sami Zayn in his Raw main roster call-up debut, what have you, is May 4th, 2015. And there is one match after this also that we sort of include in this overall gutsy performance. But this one's pretty funny because essentially what happened was, if you guys remember, John Cena used to have that great U.S. Open Challenge. And sometimes, people like, for example, Kevin Owens would debut during this. Returning superstars from the past, or just people who are involved in stories that are going to be in a thing with John Cena.
Well, in this instance, too, I believe it was the Open Challenge, and then Bret Hart comes out.
Yeah, and people were like, oh, man, John Cena's going to tap out to Sharpshooter.
Yeah, it didn't happen, though, because Bret was there to introduce John Cena's opponent, and they were in Montreal, and that, of course, is Sami Zayn's hometown. So Sami got a great response, and he was super excited. Wait, what?
First, it was Heath Slater.
Oh.
Heath Slater came out first, and then I think, I don't know, Bret punched him. I don't know what happened. But then eventually,
it was Sami.
It was actually Sami Zayn.
And Sami, naturally, very excited, hometown, Raw debut, getting to wrestle John Cena. What's there to not be excited about? And so he was trying to get the crowd hype, and in the process, he was on the ring steps, raised his hands up like this, as if to tell the crowd, come on, cheer. And in the process, his shoulder popped out and popped right back in.
He was so excited.
He popped his shoulder out.
Dislocated his own shoulder, and it popped back in. Just doing this, getting hype.
Yeah.
And
then so the match happens, and you see Sami after he raises his hands up like that. He's like, I don't know if that was supposed to happen. He was on the New Days podcast and talked about this extensively. We got some quotes here. And he's like, I don't know about that. But he's like, it popped in, popped back out. I'm sure it's all right. And he tried to communicate that to Cena, and I guess Bret, and Bret was like.
The funny thing is, if you actually watch the video, it's actually something I noted before I heard this bit from Sami Zayn. So, yeah, Sami, he does his thing, and he's like, that's not good. You can see him wince. And then he starts to get in. And as he's getting in the ring, he shakes Bret Hart's hand, and he tries to tell him something. Now, to to somebody who doesn't know what's going on, you just think, oh, hey, thank you so much for introducing me or something. In any event, regardless of what he says, Bret barely looks at him before he turns away as he's still mid-handshake. Bret could care less. Bret's entire demeanor during this entire thing is, I could kind of give a shit. And so eventually he says, well, in addition to this, you can tell he didn't exactly have all the juice in the world, Larson, because he had mentioned that he put some Vicks Vapo Rub on his mustache for reasons.
Maybe he was congested.
Yeah, that could be.
That's why That's why you use Vapo Rub if you got some congestion.
I don't know if there was like a wrestler's trick if you have a beard.
I don't know what, because this looks like he's got a bunch of boogers in his mustache.
He looks absolutely ridiculous. So he does that, and he's like, get in the ring, and I tell the ref and John Cena that I think my shoulder popped. At this point, I feel fine, and we wrestle for about a minute. He gives me a back suplex, and that's when it's out, and it's not getting back in. My arm was dead, and I couldn't roll, and I think when I finally did roll, it went back in place. So, yeah, you can see the video. John suplexes him or gives him a back suplex.
Yeah.
And then it's fairly quick that he's able to finally roll, and it goes back in. But then he ends up wrestling another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, that was early in the match where that all happened.
It was really early in the match.
You know, the doctor, the trainers ringside attend to him for a little bit, and he's like, no, I'm going to keep going, and put on a hell of a performance.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't know his shoulder had popped out, based on the performance, you really couldn't tell. I mean, there was times where he was grabbing shoulder, making sure it was all right. But, man, it was a hell of a debut. And then especially when you consider his shoulder popped out even more so.
Not only did his shoulder popped out, his no doubt childhood hero Bret Hart completely and totally acted like he didn't exist. So I would think, I don't know what would actually be worse, a shoulder pain like that or Bret completely and totally snubbing you in the middle of the ring in your debut.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how close he was with Bret or how much he cared about him. In any event, he did actually. He was on the sidelines for 7 months, but this wasn't the match that actually preceded that. He did one more match, and it was that brutal match it was a 20-minute match against Kevin Owens at TakeOver Unstoppable. And, it was the one where Kevin Owens basically power bombed him into dust towards the end. Just kept on getting, they just had to stop the match.
No, that was that was their first match. That was where Sami lost the title to Kevin Owens, and they stopped it because he power bombed so much.
Oh, what am I thinking of then?
I'm pretty sure.
In any event, he was out for 7 months. Yeah. He was out for 7 months after this. NXT TakeOver Unstoppable results. Ended as Kevin Owens champion. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. Yeah. But still, it was a brutal match. I watched most of it, evidently not the end. And yeah, Kevin Owens beat him. And it was a really brutal match.
Yeah.
And then he took 7 months off.
Yeah. And then they talked about his recovery from the surgery quite a bit on Breaking Ground.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Detail his rehab and his efforts to get back in the ring after that injury.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal. So, but of course, he's doing amazing work now.
Oh yeah.
I'm hoping that very shortly he'll be the ones, part of the ones.
Vince will go up to him and say, "God damn it, pal!
God damn it! Welcome to the bloodline.
You got some guts."
Yeah. My goodness gracious. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. After that, we've got number 9. Daniel Bryan at the greatest Royal Rumble.
So, as far as I know, apart from his chest becoming like hamburger, no injury suffered by Daniel Bryan this bout, nor was he going in with injury. But this was his second match back after, or at least his second pay-per-view match back after returning from retirement. Of course, he had his return match at Mania, tagging against Shane, with Shane against Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And then he was in the Greatest Rumble, and he was in this match forever.
Yeah, he was in it for 76 minutes.
A record.
A record. And one that I wonder, given that him and like Braun won this, and Bryan, I don't recall them really bringing this up. Match up.
They didn't in the last video package for this year's Rumble. I don't think they brought up Daniel Bryan's record.
Because Braun and Bryan are no longer with the company, so why bring it up?
Yes.
So it's sort of, who knows if they even consider this canon anymore. I'm sure if Bryan came back, they would probably start bringing it up
absolutely. He'd be back
every
in
January.
The Then Now Forever video and all that stuff. But I remember.
Yeah.
This match was a lot of fun. At least Daniel Bryan's performance in this was a lot of fun because with every chop that Roderick Strong was giving him, with every chop, his chest becoming more and more hamburger. He loved it. The joy on his face was palpable. He loved every second of it.
He had been retired for 3 years. Of course, it was a big deal. He had been cleared. And I don't think he had any other matches besides this in the WrestleMania one, which was, basically a tryout match again. Not a tryout match, but just sort of like, hey, get back into the rhythm of things.
Exactly.
And then to step right back in after 3 years, to step right back in for 76 minutes. And you could see the joy on this dude's face. And in fact, in the notes here, I'd linked to this interview that he gave after the fact. And he can't help but contain himself. His smile is so huge, and his chest is just completely obliterated. The only person he brings up is Roderick Strong because that was, the big chop battle there. He says, I haven't wrestled Roderick Strong since 2008, I think it was. And the first time I see him again, he chops the crap out of my chest. But he's just beaming from ear to ear the entire time.
So happy.
But I would definitely imagine there in Saudi Arabia, plus in Saudi Arabia, the conditions are in terms of like, the weather, the conditions there. And you could just imagine as soon as he goes backstage, God damn it, pal. Welcome back.
You got some guts.
You've got nothing but guts. And of course, you know who eliminated from this Battle Royal?
I don't remember.
You remember his first big feud after his return?
Oh, it was Cass.
Big Cass. Yeah.
So I'm looking at his. He did have Daniel Bryan did have 2 matches between Mania and this one. He had a match against AJ Styles.
Oh wow.
That ended in no
What
contest.
was that? Were these house shows or on TV?
No, they were both on SmackDown.
Okay.
That ended in DQ, and then Styles and Daniel Bryan teamed up to take on Aiden English and Rusev.
Oh wow.
The following week. So he had 2 TV matches in between Mania and Greatest Royal Rumble.
Rusev Day. He was probably extremely happy during those matches as well.
Yes, he probably was.
Number 8. Shawn Michaels, 1998.
You think I'm cute. I know I'm gutsy.
You think I'm hurt. You're probably right. So basically his 1998 consisted of 2 matches. His casket match against The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble. And then after that, because he had herniated 2 discs.
That spot is nasty.
Pretty gnarly spot that came 2 minutes into that match. And then they wrestled for another, 15 or 18 more minutes. Yeah, it was a 20-minute match. Shawn Michaels, early in a match, casket match against The Undertaker, took a back body drop out of the ring and basically took a nasty spill where his back hit the edge of the casket.
Yeah, his lower back hits the very edge of the casket. Yeah,
it did. Yeah,
oof.
Yeah. So that was it was pretty rough. This is kind of funny. There was a bit from the Wrestling Observer issue where they talked about it was a Royal Rumble review. Dave said Michaels took one incredible bump early, taking a backdrop over the top rope and cracking his lower back on the casket as he went over. He was really lucky he wasn't hurt on that one. And then a week later, the Wrestling Observer reported this past week, Michaels' doctors sent word to the WWF that he had a variety of ailments, including a bruised kidney, a slightly separated shoulder, both hips out of alignment, a sprained foot, vertebrae in his back out of alignment, not to mention a worsening of his chronic knee problems. So it was sort of like a lot that he was going through, but then this seemed to be the thing that there was no way he could work through this.
Yeah.
From the Mania. So then, of course, he wrestled at WrestleMania 14. It was kind of interesting because when you sort of do a Google search on this particular injury, what comes up is various interviews. But if it's Cornette, JR, and Pritchard, and they're all kind of asked the same question. They all address the same thing. Was this the boy who cried wolf? Because, of course, he had lost a smile when he was dealing with a knee injury and didn't want to drop the title to Brett. And they all sort of hemmed and hawed a little bit, like, yeah, that's sort of in the back of your mind, but you're not gonna, it's Shawn Michaels.
Yeah,
you're not gonna go there really. So this right here is from the actual WrestleMania review, and honestly, you watch this WrestleMania match, and it is clear the
He's
guy
not
is
100%.
in pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so he's like, he's arching his back quite a bit during this and sort of limping around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He still does an ungodly number of really cool things, but it's clear that this is a distraction,
Yeah.
It's like the HBK when he's at his peak, he's crisp, he's clean,
Fast.
He's fast, and the storytelling is on point. This is a lot more basic than that. This is obviously, let me get through this, and let me do what I'm supposed to do here. Which even then, I guess there was some question as to whether or not he was going to drop that title.
Yeah.
Evidently, Undertaker was at the ready in case something weird happened.
Yeah. Yep.
So from Meltzer's Mania review, he said this. Unofficially, it appeared that Michaels, who went into the ring with a serious back injury that was believed to need surgery, tried to gut out a classic performance, but perhaps the only stark reality in the show itself got in the way. While attempting to will himself to the level of classic matches that he's become famous for on big shows, Michaels re-injured his back early on, gutted out a good but not great match with a banged-up Austin. He had vertebrae damage going into the match, which no doubt was aggravated by the early bumps. The pain etched on his face as if he was willing himself simply not to pass out before leaving center stage, and yet was still able to be entertaining, was the real story of the show. After the show, the reports were that he suffered a ruptured disc in his back and would be out of action for long enough, like 9 to 12 months, that there are no plans for his involvement anytime soon. The next night on TV, he was written out of the script with Hunter Hearst Helmsley taking over and creating a new DX. So, yeah, of course, he was out for, 4 years?
4 years, I believe. Came back in 2002, right?
In 2002, yeah. And even then, it was like, well, let me get a match into the street fight with Triple H.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where we go from there. And then, 2 matches later, they put the title on it or
I know.
something like
It was
that.
supposed to be a one-time deal, that street fight with Triple H. Supposed to come back for that one match, and that was that. But you end up sticking around for another few years. So.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of people think that second run exceeded the first run because it was just seemingly classic after classic. That's when he had his WrestleMania Undertaker matches that were highly regarded, and the Flair match. And honestly, I think there's a lot of validity to that. Like, his matches were really special. He'd cleaned up his act quite a bit as well.
Yep.
And of course, his best friend was basically running the show, Triple H. So he had a lot of accomplishments in that second run as well.
He did. Let's take a quick break here to get a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp Online Therapy. Steve, life can be overwhelming at times, and it's easy to feel burned out without realizing it. While burnout is often associated with work, any of life's roles can lead to burnout.
That's true, Larson. So if you're feeling fatigued, irritable, or unmotivated, you could be dealing with burnout. And BetterHelp wants to remind you to prioritize yourself. Talking to someone can help you find out what's causing the stress in your life.
Yeah, I've been there before. I've felt that fatigue, that lack of motivation, that irritability that comes with burnout. And I've gone through the process of trying to find a therapist, so I know how difficult it can be to find the right person to talk to. But BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to.
It's also much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. And right now, Going In Raw listeners can get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/raw. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/raw.
Before we get back to the show, let's get a word from our sponsor, First Person. Steve, I think a lot of us wouldn't mind turning back the clock. For some, it might be for vanity. For others, to relive their glory days. But for me, I just wanted to wake up in the morning and feel rested and energized for the day like I did when I was younger. And now, thanks to First Person, I'm getting some of the best sleep I've had in years and waking up feeling focused and energized.
That's awesome, man. After witnessing the deteriorating effects Alzheimer's has had on their father and grandfather's cognitive health, brothers Chris and Joe were determined to take their brain health into their own hands. So they created First Person, which uses the brain-boosting medicinal benefits of mushrooms to activate the full potential of human cognition and brain health.
I've struggled with getting good sleep for years, but ever since I started taking First Person's Moonlight supplement, I've been getting some amazing sleep. I've also taken their Sunbeam supplement, which has helped with my focus. With First Person, I feel like I'm finally unlocking Larson's full potential.
That's awesome, man. First-person supplements are made with functional mushrooms that look to stimulate the body's natural production of specific neurotransmitters that trigger activities like energy, mood, and, as you just mentioned, Larson, sleep.
Yeah, sleep. So start improving your brain health and cognition with First Person. Get 15% off your first order by going to getfirstperson.com and use code RAW. That's GETFIRSTPERSON.com, code RAW for 15% off your first order. Getfirstperson.com, code RAW.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Yeah. All right, let's move on to number 7. Finn Balor.
We were there
for this.
Yeah, SummerSlam 2016.
We always like, we were there for this one. We saw it in person.
Well, I mean, part of this particular match was kind of overshadowed because it was preceded by the debut of the new Universal title, of course, with the bright red strap.
That
and the
title's
crowd
ugly.
Jumped all over it.
What a crap title.
And every time they showed the title on the Tron, the crowd
boo.
And then 4 minutes into the bout, Seth barricade bombs Finn into the barricade, and Finn pops his shoulder out, puts it back in, finished the match, only to find out that he had a labrum tear. I think he separated his shoulder as well. And of course, the next word got out the next day that he was hurt, probably had to vacate the title. Sure enough, that happened. I remember after the match was over, and he was holding the new Universal title in the injured arm, and the other one he was raising. And at first, without knowing the injury, I was like, "Oh, is he like he understands the crowd's reaction to the belt? Is he trying to not like showcase that in the celebration?" No, he hurt his arm.
Yeah,
he couldn't raise it.
He couldn't raise it. Yeah, he couldn't raise the other one. Yeah, he did. I mean, after that happened, after it was 4 minutes into the match, he wrestled 15 more minutes. God damn it, that's a gutsy performance. Yeah. So he came back. He made his TV return after WrestleMania 33.
We were there for that too.
We were there for that too. It was on the Raw after Mania. That's right. Yeah. Where he teamed up with the man who barricade bombed him, Seth Rollins, and he beat Owens and was Samoa Joe in the tag match. Is that what it was? Boy, that's a match right there.
Yeah.
And then so look, he had a hot start. They treated him like a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
This was unfortunate. It seems like I think everybody sort of understands that like eventually he was just going to lose that title to Brock.
Well, I think
anyways.
I think that was the deal that that was reported, that he was going to hold it and then eventually just lose it to Brock, and then what everything that happened after that would have happened.
Yeah, so he probably would still be in the new Judgment Day at this point.
Probably.
That would still be the case.
Probably.
But he had that moment. You can't take that one moment away from him. He was the very first Universal Champion.
And he got called up and he was treated like an absolute superstar.
He was, and they rarely do that anymore.
Yep.
I'm sorry. They never do that anymore. Those days are completely over. Let me look at Tommaso Ciampa right now.
Ugh.
Anyways, moving on. Number 6. Triple H. So this dude also wrestled a match with muscle torn off bone. In this case, it was a quad.
Yeah.
Back on May 21st, 2001, in what many consider to be the greatest match ever in the history of Raw.
Yep. 2-man power trip, defending the tag titles against Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. And so Jericho had Austin in the walls of Jericho. And Triple H goes over to break it up. Routine thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Quad ripped right off the bone. Yet he continued the match. It was a fairly famous shot where he makes the save, sledgehammer. Anyways, the game was on. Talk as Jericho back.
Didn't he? Hold on. Didn't he also do? Yeah. Then he was put in the walls of.
Yeah, he talks about that here.
He
talks about that here. So he was on Talk as Jericho in 2014 and talked about it. The injury. These transcripts are from Pro Wrestling Stories. So Jericho kicks things off. Says, I remember thinking this is one of the toughest dudes. Here, you beat Triple H, I'll beat Jericho.
Okay.
I remember thinking this is one of the toughest dudes I've ever been in the ring with in my life, because he finished that match with a torn quad, came back in the ring to make the save with the sledgehammer, took a walls. That was incredible, man.
I remember you said, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." I mean, I couldn't even put weight on it, but I was like, "Whatever. I don't think I can make it any worse. So I was like, put the walls on me. When you did, I remember you turning me over and thinking, really bad decision. Like, holy shit, I remember you putting me down on the table. I had to go back in the ring to do the spot. I was like, oh my God, am I going to be able to get up to the ring? And I was like, I got to go.
I don't know how you got back in.
I remember rolling to the floor and just curling up in a fetal position. Vince coming out and saying, what did you do? And me saying, I tore my quad. I felt it when it went, man. I just felt it roll up. God damn. Roll up to my hip. Oh, God. He says, the trainer said, no way, you couldn't have. You couldn't be walking on it. I said, I'm telling you. And he put his hand in there and was like, wow, you did. He could feel the divot and stuff. Oh, my God. He says, here's another thing. I remember coming up the ramp, and as we were getting to the top of the ramp, I was doing the math in my head. 4 months rehab. Can I be back for Mania? That was my whole mentality because it was like May when I did it, but I was thinking like, man, I don't think SummerSlam's an option, but I know I could probably be back for later. He says, I didn't know how bad it was, and I didn't know Dr. Andrews was going to come to me and go like, you might never wrestle again. Here's the thing. I don't know anybody that's ever come back from this, from the level that you did it.
This is Dr. James Andrews talking, and Triple H, through Triple H's lens here.
Triple H is doing an impression of Dr. Andrews now.
Yeah.
He says, I've never seen a contact sports athlete come back from this, so if you do, it's going to be awesome. I put it back together. It's back together as good as it can go, but now it's on your rehab.
So he also said, Triple H also said during this interview that for his rehab, he stayed in Birmingham, Alabama for 9 months.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, yeah.
Lived out of an Embassy Suites hotel for 9 months to rehab this injury, to make it back for the January 7th, 2002 edition of Raw at Madison Square Garden. I remember watching this, one of the loudest pops I've ever heard on a broadcast wrestling show.
It was huge. It was huge. This is also, I think, one of the first times, maybe the first time, that they did the whole rehab music video.
Oh, could be.
Because I think it was to like U2's Beautiful Day or something like that, and they sort of kept track of his progress, and it was a really, really well done rehab music video. Mm-hmm. And then of course, when he comes back, I think it was just on everybody's mind, man. And it was so smart to do this as like a baby face, because I don't think he wasn't even a face that long. Like it's in his just nature to be bad guy. Mm-hmm. But no, to bring him back to that pop. I mean, people just, and he had gotten just loaded jacked in the meantime. Like his upper body especially was just massive. Came out in the denim vest, leather jacket combo. And people just, they went ape shit for it. They went crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was something else.
After that, we've got number 5. CM Punk. Now, we're taking the phrase gutsy literal here because he spilled his guts out when he pooped his pants. But it was sort of the result of basically an entire 2013, which led up to him leaving WWE in early 2014 because of just how banged up and beat up he was. Yeah. And having to do matches with like Ryback. I mean, that itself is gutsy enough. Yeah. I'll never understand. You have CM Punk and you put him in a thing with Ryback, fine. And then a year later you put him back in a thing with Ryback.
Yeah, I don't get that.
It's just terrible. So I've got like in our notes, I've got a transcript from The Art of Wrestling. And it's a lot, but I highlighted in bold like all the bits where he actually talks about being beat up. And it goes back to pre-WrestleMania, so probably post-Rumble.
It's when he still had the belt. No, it's still when he still had the belt before dropping it to The Rock. This is
which was at Royal Rumble. So it's like either the beginning of 2013, maybe even precedes that. He says, I was beat up. I already needed a knee surgery at that point, but I was the champion. So I was like, I got to keep going, I told Vince that I need this knee fixed. I'll do it after I drop the title to The Rock. But at the same time, he also admits he was also trying to convince Vince, hey, let me make the main event a 3-way instead of the second in a lifetime thing. Mm-hmm. But Vince shot that down, every time he tried. Yeah. He mentions being on a European tour after WrestleMania where he wrestled Rey Mysterio. Oh, this might be preceding that because he talked about just being banged up in general, having an elbow every night that locked up like a 45-degree angle, and he couldn't bend it. He couldn't move it. So
this bit here is interesting. He says he had, I assume, LASIK surgery, laser eye surgery, after his elbow surgery. He says, I got the surgery. It was either, I was doing SmackDown, so it was Wednesday or Thursday, because while he was recovering from the surgery, I guess he was still doing shows. It's not wrestling. And he says, then Vince called me Friday. He was like, I heard the surgery was, I was successful. Like, yeah, I'm going to go to rehab and I'll be back before you know it. He's like, well, actually, I'm going to have them send you some travel right now because, I mean, it's just your elbow hurt. We can have you cut promo. So already back on the road after like 5 days, not even like 4 days.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was terrible. He says, so I did that, and then that's when I started getting super beat up. That's when I tore my knee against John. He says, I kept asking what was going on for Mania, and Vince kept very disappointingly telling me it was going to be the rematch between Cena and Rock. I was like, that's going to be awful. How about we do this? So then Ryback was brought up.
Ugh.
And he's like, I'm already beat up, and I have to wrestle Steroid Guy. He says, I call it like I see it. He's very hurty, sometimes deliberate. There's one time he kicked me in the stomach as hard as he could, and he broke my ribs right at the tail end. And I never even got an apology for that. He was something else, a real piece of work, that guy. Talks about WrestleMania 2013. He says, obviously, I tore my other knee up super bad. Strained ACL, torn MCL, torn meniscus, torn PCL, 2 months off. He comes back. They have him against Ryback again. He says, first night out, gorilla press through a table, misses the table, dumps me on the concrete ground, tilts me on my pelvis, fucks me up for weeks. He says, somewhere along the line, I started to feel worse than I've ever felt in my entire life. I worked Luke Harper in a match, and I got hit with something, and it fucking rung my bell, and I got a concussion. But we were leaving for Europe the next day. So Doc was leaning on me going, do you have a concussion, or can you go to Europe? He said, and I was just like, you fucking pigs, I'll go to Europe, whatever. He says, that's on me. That's my fault. I probably shouldn't have. After the European tour, I'm dry heaving after every match. Luckily, I was in tags. It was me and Daniel Bryan versus the Wyatts, and they were awesome. They were fun, the parts I remember. But I'm on all fours after every match, and I'm either puking for real or I'm just dry heaving because I don't have anything in my stomach. I have no appetite. I don't know what's up and what's down. I can't sleep. I can't train. It's like a bus, a hotel, a cold building. And that's where he mentions the Z-Packs. He says, Doc has given me like, oh, you're sick. Here's a Z-Pack. They Z-Packed me to death so much that in December, I shit my pants on a SmackDown because that's what antibiotics do to you, right? He said, at some point, I'm hurting, but I'm hurting so bad, I'm getting 2 MRIs a week, legit. My neck, my head, we MRI'd my chest because we didn't know if there was something going on. I'm getting CAT scans. I am fucked up. And it turns out, of course, he had a staph infection.
It was in his back, I believe. He had a staph infection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, the poop in the pants was culmination of a better part of a year, if not more, of just being beat up, of being hurt, being injured, and being beat up, and not having time to recuperate and recover and rehabilitate those injuries.
Yeah.
And it's...
Yeah. And, I mean, honestly, it's as if, like, you know, Punk is one of those guys who, he ain't like a John Cena, who there's several parallels, but there's also a lot of divergent sort of aspects to these two guys. Cena's the kind of guy who he can put on a 5-star match, but I think consistently he would usually do the standard Cena match. Mm-hmm. CM Punk's not that guy. He will give everything he has to seemingly every match he puts on. This has been him. It's been him in this run in AEW. It was him back in WWE. And what would happen? He would get busted up. Mm-hmm. He'd get injured. Mm-hmm. Cena seemingly would almost never. I mean, he would if he would get busted up, he'd come back like
he has an unreal healing ability.
Right.
Yeah.
Punk's human.
Yeah.
And so he would get busted up, and he would never phone it in the ring, even if it meant he'd be living like this. He'd always be wrestling, even if it meant he'd be wrestling like this. That's just the nature of how he was. So it's kind of not surprising that it reached ahead. You would just think that Vince at some point would have said, hey, take as much time off as you want. Come back when you feel good enough, as opposed to, we need you.
I know.
We need you. It's like, dude, come on. You have an entire company. Build somebody else up.
Yeah, I know. Oh, if you need me that bad, put me in the main event of WrestleMania.
Yeah. I know. Exactly.
Didn't do that,
Didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
Let's move on. Number 4.
4.
Cody Rhodes. We've talked about this one a lot lately. Of course, if you're watching this 5 years from after the fact and you're like, who's Cody Rhodes? That's weird.
It's like, well, at this point, he's probably a former WWE champion, but also he wrestled a match with one pectoral muscle intact.
Yeah, so evidently, what was it, like, I don't know, a couple days before or something like that.
Yeah,
I know the day before there was a house show that he was scheduled to be at, and it was announced that he was injured, and so he just did like a little run-in bit against Seth, because Seth Rollins was taking on Drew McIntyre. But then it was reported by the Wrestling Observer that sometime during the week he had a weightlifting accident, or a weightlifting injury, rather, not accident. And it was revealed that his pectoral muscle was torn completely off the bone.
Yeah.
Which, talking about Triple H earlier, he had something similar in a match, his last like real match anyways, his last big match.
Yeah.
Was DX versus Kane and Undertaker in Saudi Arabia. It was a dog shit match, but that might be because Triple H tore pec from bone in that match as well.
Get back to Triple H. There's at least 3 instances where he got hurt in the ring. We've mentioned 2 of them. The other time is when he got his throat crushed in the first Elimination Chamber bout.
Yeah.
And he finished the match with his larynx injured.
Yeah, he's a tough dude.
He is a tough dude. Gutsy. God damn it, pal.
Hunter,
you got some guts. Anyways, but get back to Cody. Apparently he was insistent on going through this match. I guess apparently he was cleared to the degree that he couldn't hurt himself any worse. He's already off the bone. It's injured as much as it's going to be injured. So and credit to Seth Rollins for going out there and doing everything he could to make it look like he was beating the heck out of Cody Rhodes, and he was probably doing everything he could to protect the guy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this was a masterful match. It was difficult to watch because, I mean, you just know that he's in pain. And then I'd mentioned this before on one of our different shows, but I was watching Pat McAfee talk about this, and him and AJ Hawk both were concurring. Yeah, this is a horribly painful injury. And even if he got loaded up with shots, which no doubt they tried to do some painkillers in there.
I would think so.
The shot itself would have to be horrifically painful. And then who knows? I mean, I don't know how body chemistry works once you're in there. Maybe some of it wears off. Maybe the adrenaline kicks in and helps you out. I don't know if the adrenaline hits the soul or not. But in any event, it was definitely one of the gutsiest performances, I have no doubt. When Cody Rhodes went backstage, Vince was there. God damn it, pal. That's a gutsy performance.
You got some guts. I mean, we saw like the bruising intensify and spread during the course of the match.
It became sentient.
This is one of the instances.
AI.
I think maybe the only instance in this list where at the time we knew the exact nature of the injury. A lot of these times that where there's an injury involved in these entries, the injury happens during the match.
Yeah.
They have to kind of gut it out to get to the finish of the match, and then after that, then they'll go and seek treatment, surgery, whatever. But this is the one instance that I'm not going to scroll up, but I think where we knew the injury going into it, we could see the injury during the match, and God damn it, gutsy performance, Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, that's what really puts this up there for me. It's funny because the rest of these, we'll talk about them here in a second. This one, actively during the match, you're sitting there like, oh my God, it's so uncomfortable. And you can realize in real time just how gutsy this is.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that for the other ones. Let's dive into it. The top 3. Number 3. Shibata from Sakura Genesis 2017. This was like one of the first, we had just really started watching.
This was Okada's second defense after his match against Kenny at Wrestle Kingdom. It was this one. It was Suzuki when he returned at New Year's Dash. So at New Beginning, and then at Sakura Genesis, it was this bout against Okada in 2017, and phenomenal bout.
Oh yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. This was in that stretch, that 2-year stretch where Okada was undoubtedly the best wrestler in the entire world.
Yeah.
He had like a 40-minute match against Suzuki at New Beginning. This was almost 40 minutes. About a half hour into it, Shibata delivers perhaps the most thunderous headbutt I've ever seen and heard in a wrestling match, because it sounded like someone got hit in the head with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
The sound that headbutt made.
It was pretty sickening.
I believe were we watching this together?
Yeah, we
live?
were watching it live when it happened. Yeah.
And I remember wincing when that happened. And then there's that great classic shot of afterwards where Okada, he sells it, and they get a good close up on Shibata, and you just see that one little bit of blood start to go down his forehead.
Yeah.
And at the time you're like, wow, this is badass. But we don't know what's going on at this point, So the match goes another 8 minutes. Okada wins. Shibata goes backstage, collapses. And we start finding out over the course of the following weeks that he was rushed to the hospital, diagnosed with the subdural hematoma. Blood was pooling between his brain and his skull. And he had to have emergency surgery to save his life. He had to retire for a number of years. He just came back to do wrestling on an occasional basis. I think he's had 2 matches since coming back. He's training at the LA dojo, but this is one of those matches that I love watching it. Absolutely loved watching it. Knowing what happened to Shibata, it's hard to go back and watch it, because at that moment when it happens, they have that close up of Shibata. He's like, wow. I mean, that the sound that headbutt made was awful.
Yeah.
But the moment and the story they're telling, like, holy shit. This is incredible, but given what happened to him at that moment, it's hard to go back to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where that's one thing I sort of picked up on in New Japan when we first started watching it. I was like, okay, so I know this stuff, like WWE would never let their guys do it. A lot of the stuff they would do. I remember I forget which match it was. Was it a Naito match? No. What match was it? There was like a second rope. No, I think it was the Okada Kenny match when there was like a top rope dragon suplex or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, these guys are landing so close to being on the top of their head so often. Like, they're just men. Like, they still get hurt. These things are not good for them. And I have noticed over the years that kind of stuff is dialed down a little bit.
Yeah.
Certainly from when we started watching, it seemed like, God, man, these guys are just going overboard. And this is certainly something. The headbutt was certainly something. And I don't know, maybe this was something that was meant to be a lot more worked than it was. Maybe the timing was simply off. We've seen headbutts, and oftentimes they look fake, and I'm fine with that. We saw when Kevin Owens headbutted Vince McMahon, that was real, and I really kind of wish they wouldn't have done that, because I just don't need to see that, And so yeah, this is very tough to watch. It's Shibata's known as he's a tough dude who lays in stiff, and I get that, but at the same time, it's pro wrestling. I don't need these dudes really to be laying it in.
I know. Or
I don't need them to be hurting each other. Yeah.
Totally. I know. It's one of those instances where, again, it was incredible at the moment. And then you hear about what happens, and then it's just your heart breaks for Shibata, because he'd been wrestling for so long. I don't know if this is his first title shot, but it definitely seemed like the story of the match was basically, oh man, is Shibata going to win this thing? Because he beat the heck out of Okada.
He did.
He beat the heck out of him.
It was Okada just sort of survived Shibata.
Yeah, similar to the Suzuki match that preceded it. And then to find out, he came so close to being champion, and then because of this one instance, for a number of years, having his career taken from him. And it's just it's just incredibly difficult to watch in hindsight. It's rough. It's really rough.
It is. Let's dive to number 2. Mankind at King of the Ring 1998, the third Hell in a Cell match? I know the second pay-per-view Hell in a Cell match, but I think there was one.
There was one on Raw, or was a dark match or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, this has been replayed in clips over and over and over again whenever a Hell in a Cell, well, not this year, I guess. Typically, if there's a big Hell in a Cell thing, they start playing clips from this. I don't recall any from this year, but they love to dive back to this. Mankind being, of course, thrown off the top of the cage through the table was one thing. And you, me, and I think Hilton and a couple others were all watching this live.
It's at my parents' house.
That's right. And that was hard. It was like, oh my God, that's a long way down. But then he's moving, and they come and they stretch him out. I was like, okay, wow, that was a shocking end of that. And then he gets off the stretcher. And then it's like, oh man, this guy's badass, especially like when we were whatever age we were, under 20.
Early 20s, yeah.
Early 20s, yeah. I was not 20 yet. I was 19. And then he climbs the cage, and it's like, oh my God. And Undertaker looks shocked, and then he goes through the cage, and a chair like sort of falls on his head at the same time. And granted, you don't know at the time that he's concussed, but certainly there was the thought in our heads that probably shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Given the landing and the speed with which they got in the ring to check on him.
Yeah.
And of course there was that shot of him kind of huddled up in the corner looking at the camera. He's bleeding from his mouth. He's got one of his teeth hanging out of his nostril.
Yeah.
So during the course of this match, here's a list of the injuries he suffered: a concussion, a dislocated jaw, a dislocated shoulder, bruised ribs, internal bleeding, puncture wounds, and he had some teeth knocked out. And he finished the match. I mean, like the getting thrown off the cage, that happened within like the first couple minutes.
Yeah.
And then him going through it, pretty quickly thereafter. There were spots inside the ring. There was thumbtacks introduced. Foley apparently said on a Broken Skull Sessions, this fly in here, that if he had taken the Undertaker's choke slam on the top of cells, he normally would, like actually jumping and taking the bump as he normally would, that it's entirely possible when he went through that panel, he would have over-rotated and landed right on his head.
Yeah.
So, as awful as the outcome of this match was for Mick Foley physically, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, this is one of those things where Vince has to consider himself at least kind of lucky, because let's put ourselves back in those shoes, back watching, right? So a guy gets chucked off the top of a cage, comes back, climbs the cage. If that happened and he landed on his head, number one, Mick is a heavy guy. Yeah, it's not like it's happening to a cruiserweight. That might be death right there.
Yeah,
like it really could be.
Yep.
What are the consequences for WWE if that ends up being the case? I mean, you would think that's like the kind of thing where like Congress get involved or something, because like it's professional wrestling, it's entertainment.
I know.
And it's like I know what happened with Owen Hart, but that didn't happen with All Eyes, and I honestly think that was sort of a thing. Is it wasn't like all eyes were on Owen when it happened. The lights were down, they're all looking at something else. Sometimes those little details kind of matter, whether or not you see that happen or not.
Yeah.
I don't. This is because it's incredibly lucky the way it actually happened. All things considered.
Yeah, no. I guess Foley said that when he went backstage, Vince said to him, "I appreciate what you just did for me, but don't ever do anything like that ever again."
Yeah. Because, my God, you imagine sweating through that one?
I know.
It's like in the fucking panel goes down, and if there's anything sticking on that panel and it drops but slower, I don't know how you rotate out of that. That's, oof.
Yeah.
That's gnarly.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's dive into number one. Number one. Kenny Omega. Last year, 2021.
Pretty much the entirety of 2021, yeah. He became the belt collector, winning, well, of course, he won the AEW title like late 2020. He got the Impact titles, Mega Championship. He's carrying all those titles through 2021. He did it while battling a series of injuries. Shoulder. I don't know what shoulder. Knee. Had a hernia. And then apparently he's been suffering from vertigo for at that point 4 years. So I guess it was a match against Okada in the 2017 G1 where Okada hits him with a drop kick, and when Kenny's taking the bump, Okada lands kind of on him, and Okada's knee hits Kenny in the head. And I guess he says since that point he's been suffering from vertigo. So we'll get in the ring, have the match, and the ring will start spinning. That alone is enough for, I would think, a lot of wrestlers to be like, I need to step away to get this taken care of. considering he had the shoulder injury, the hernia, the knee problems. I mean, we haven't seen him since he dropped the belt to Hangman Page about 7 months ago.
Right.
It seems like they're all relatively serious injuries, enough to keep him out of action individually. Collectively, that's battling through a lot. It
is. Yeah, especially, I mean, I can't stress enough the vertigo aspect of things is absolutely crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Where in a sport and an entertainment that space and coordination means so much.
Paramount.
Yeah.
For the safety of everybody in the ring, absolutely.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. So, yeah, but it's funny because Kenny Omega has been one of the most important, even from a business standpoint, one of the most important figures in pro wrestling since 2017. I mean, you think of how much of New Japan's popularity has been because of his name and what he delivers in the ring, and then, of course, the ascent of AEW. Kenny has really given everything he has had, his entire body. He's put it all out there, and the world of pro wrestling has benefited greatly from it. So yeah, I mean, I totally understand where everybody is in terms of, man, we want Kenny to come back. I just want Kenny to be happy and healthy.
Exactly.
And yeah, I cannot believe that he went through what he went through. So yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm looking. I'm doing some little some correction here. So the Sami Zayn match, it was actually stopped. The unstoppable one.
Oh, all right.
So the first one is when he just powerbombed him into oblivion.
Yeah.
This second one, Kevin Owens powerbombs him onto the apron, and Sami can't go on anymore. So Kevin Owens just attacks him. The match is called a no contest. And so, yeah, I mean, they kind of ended in similar ways
fashion.
here.
Okay.
But, yeah, no, in my head, that one where he just powerbombed him 10,
where
15
Kevin Owens
times
essentially won by TKO in the first match.
Yeah. Regal comes out. Oh, God. Regal puts his hands on Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens headbutts him. Oh, I miss this Kevin Owens. Oh, it was so good. He's got a chair. And then the debuting Samoa Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Comes out. So, yeah, that was a hell of a takeover right there. So, anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Countout. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back. Probably do one of these I don't know. We might do them on a weekly basis. If
I got an idea for one next week. I just got to do a little research.
No, what is it? Can you give us a clue?
Oh, it's like the craziest, most shocking super shows. We got Forbidden Door coming up.
Give me a hint on one. Give me a hint that isn't Super Clash. Is Super Clash on your list?
Well, of course, Super Clash is on there. Why wouldn't it be? It's Super Clash.
Is that number one? That's the greatest super show.
No, number one. I remember what number one is. To look at my list again.
Okay. I'm excited. That sounds like a fun one. I can't even think of three off the top of my head.
No, I found it. I think 9 or 10. Might have to find one more.
Very cool. All right. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Till next time. Well, how about the WWE versus AEW one that we did for We Book Raw?
It's not a real one, though, Steve.
It's great. It was real to me. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.